It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about on Sunday. President Joe Biden announced that he was stepping aside, passing the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris for this campaign. Going to finish out his term, focus on getting done the things that he wanted to do in the first term, but handing over the torch. Interesting watching the freak out. I personally remember Nikki Haley during the Republican primary saying the first party to retire its 80-year-old candidate will win this election. And I think she's right. I think Joe knew, as I said from the beginning, was going to do what was in the best interest of the country. He saw what was coming after that debate and said, look, it's time to pass the torch. And in the good and the best of the country did that. But there's what is it? The Nikki Haley supporter pack, the voter pack, who now has come out and endorsed Kamala Harris. Interesting. And you got to wonder how many Republicans now are going to go, well, we've been hating Joe Biden for so long. We've been trained to hate Joe. All of our Let's Go Brandon material is now worthless. Now what are we going to do? Could be following the lead of the Nikki Haley pack there, of the voter pack, and going towards Kamala. Now, going to be interesting because, understand, as Biden left, money started flowing in. In fact, Sunday it's been reported more than $30 million into the coffers. Every state Democratic Party chair by Sunday night had thrown their support to Kamala Harris. It's interesting watching now the party find some unity. Now, President Obama says that he would like an open process to choose the nominee. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the open process is everyone will get behind Kamala Harris, and I think it may happen this week. Now, Joe Manchin, evidently, there's someone saying that he's considering to become a Democrat again, and he's considering to maybe run for president. And the only person who wants Joe Manchin to run for president clearly is Joe Manchin. There will be no support for him. Now, again, I think we will see by the end of this week if anyone steps forward. It's a big undertaking to fire up a presidential campaign, to get the staff, to get the field operation, to do all that. I think what's going to happen, I think everyone will come together around Joe Biden's wishes of Kamala being the nominee, and we'll get behind her in a big way. Because ultimately, look, Democrats are not about one person. This has never been about Joe Biden. And I've said this before. I voted for a set of ideals. I voted for a direction, a vision. Biden, in my view, was supposed to be a one-term president anyway. He was supposed to be the guy who calms everything down, which he's done amazingly. He's supposed to be the guy who changes our direction, sets us on the right path, gives us the tools, and says, go. I think he's done that pretty well. And he's now chosen Kamala Harris to be his successor. He's passed the torch. It's time to get in line. Time to move the agenda forward. Understand, for me, it's about winning. Now, the other side, everyone knows the Republican Party right now is the party of Trump. There's no question about that. There's no one in that party with the kind of juice that he's got. No one. No one can challenge his power. We even saw Nikki Haley, who I got to tell you, a little surprised seeing Nikki Haley bowing at the RNC, endorsing him. Look, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, the rest of them, yeah, I get it. But Nikki Haley? Especially after the claim that, whoever retires their 80-year-old candidate first will win. So I guess she's predicting a Biden win. Now, look, I go back to what I said. I think Joe sat long and hard, looked at the polling like everyone else did, looked at their internals, and said, look, maybe I just don't have what I had. Because understand, in September, if he would have gone through another debate, it wouldn't matter how well he did. The bar would have been so high that no one would have reached it. Trump would have just had to show up. Even if he drooled all over him, it wouldn't have mattered. Now, what'll be interesting is watching Democrats pivot on the age issue and go after Trump. And the question that I have, will our mainstream media now start paying attention to all of the gaffes and the misstatements and the forgetfulness and the calling of the wrong names and all of the dementia type stuff that they called out for Biden? Will they now turn to Trump and do the same thing? Will we now see that machine that some of my Democratic friends think pushed Biden out? Will you see that machine now turn to Trump? I don't think so, because understand, the moneyed interests, they want Trump. That's simple. Now, will there be a fight over Biden's choice? I don't think so. At this moment, I'm betting that everyone, like all the state party chairs on the moneyed interest, I'm betting everyone goes, look, we've got to take on Trump. We've got to beat this horrible Project 2025. We've got to beat this machine. We've got to make sure that our candidates are funded, are sourced, and are ready to go, and that we're all on the same page. And I'm betting that's where we're going to be. I'm betting the convention is going to be a coronation, not a messy, open, ugly convention. And look, that could be good too. Who knows? But I'm guessing, and we'll know more as the week goes on, but I'm guessing it's going to be a unity thing. I'm guessing it's going to be a solidarity thing, and all about just how bad Donald Trump was for working people, how chaotic his administration was, how chaotic things were even before the pandemic. Now, if there is an open convention, who will it be? Evidently, someone threw Joe Manchin's name out. And who could that be? I'm guessing Joe Manchin. I'm guessing the only person in the Democratic Party who wants Joe Manchin to mess things up is Joe Manchin. So maybe he'll seek some attention. I don't know, but we'll see. Finally, the thought, who's going to be the VP? I mean, that's the big prize, isn't it? Who will she choose to be her running mate? There have been a lot of names out there. Gretchen Whitmer's name's been thrown out as an all-female ticket. I have some female friends who are like, yes, that's what we want. I've heard a bunch of names. Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona. I personally like Sherrod Brown. In a tough race in Ohio, that would be conceding that seat to a Republican. But I finally got to tell you, I think the right person, I'm going to go with Pete Buttigieg again. I think he's somebody who will stand up to J.D. Vance and have a great story to tell to match Vance's story. And in a debate, hands down, I'm putting my money on Pete Buttigieg. That's simple for me. So this race just got really exciting. The energy is going to be, Trump loves to talk about energy. This just energized this campaign. And the question is, can Trump keep up with the energy? And how much crazier is he going to get? And how much of the quiet stuff is he going to say out loud, especially on the race issue? Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got an email from a listener last week that caught my attention. You remember we talked about Teamsters President Sean O'Brien appearing at the RNC convention, effusive with praise at the beginning. And then look, 2/3 of that speech is it's stuff I say every day and been saying every day for the last 20 years on this program. But, it's that third that I got a problem with. But the email says, look, I like your show. I've been a viewer for a long time. I'm here to express my unwavering support for Teamsters President Sean O'Brien and his willingness to stand up for the rights of workers. I am too. Love the fact that he does that, just not there. He said, while I understand and respect your statement on the matter, he is the president and in charge. He should be given your support. We'll see. But then does this weird kind of flip. Says, I support the role of that unions play in protecting workers' rights. In the private sector, I must express my disdain for government unions that represent coddled teachers and lazy career bureaucrats. They do not need unions, according to this person. They are servants of the people, he says, and should be accountable to the people. We both know it's impossible to fire a bad teacher or government employee, but I did. And then another weird flip, I found your segment on the high cost of rent. Infuriating. Glad Biden is doing something. So a couple things there. But the one I want to get to is this assault on government workers, especially unionized government workers. And here to share some thoughts on this certain email, I've asked my good friend Phil Glover to come talk with us. Phil's the AFGE District 3 National Vice President. Phil, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate having me back.
So, look, you're somebody who represents these, how did it go again? Lazy career government bureaucrats.
That's us. Yeah.
Who are you?
Well, that was interesting when I read that. I wonder if this individual understands what the federal workforce does, and especially the unionized federal workforce. We have the Veterans Affairs nurses and doctors. They're unionized people. They're out there helping veterans. We have all the people that work at VA hospitals, including the groundskeepers and the folks that keep the rooms clean for those veterans and all of that, physical therapy, all the things that are done for veterans. We represent those folks. And then we have the Federal Bureau of Prisons, which keeps criminals locked up across. And in Pennsylvania, that's 9 federal prisons and thousands of employees that keep, your community safe every day. And, they're unionized. You've got the Border Patrol, who are, everybody's favorite on the conservative side of the aisle. And, those are unionized workers in AFG. And, I could go on. Department of Defense workers, the workers out of Toby Hanna Army Depot, for instance, they actually deploy with the military to keep their equipment operating properly when they're in the field. So you have civilian workers out there along with the military, and those are unionized federal workers. And we have meat inspectors. Let's talk about your meat and food safety. Those are federalized union workers that work in those meat plants and make sure that your food's safe. And I could go on and on.
Sure. I mean, you could go into EPA inspector, OSHA inspector. Sure. You go down the line of all of the things that our government does, all of those jobs, from, sanitation workers to, to people who keep the parks, and, our, police and teachers. And going after teachers is, again, another one of those things where it's an easy target. Government's always been an easy target to attack. And interestingly enough, and this is where the reason I brought you on to talk about this email in particular is, there is a support right now for unions, and the right has done a masterful job in trying to divide workers' ability to join unions by classifying them private and public. We're okay with those private sector unions. They're okay because they're weak right now and have to go through a whole bunch of hoops and join a union. But it's the public sector where there's actually some decent density. And it's a little more easy to join and to do things. It seems interesting that this came up now, given the fact that we just had the political theater there with the RNC.
Yeah, and I think, what I don't understand about someone who supports unions, support all unions. All workers should be able to join a union, no matter if you're public sector or private sector. It shouldn't matter. We all need protection from bad management. We need protection from bad decisions or even inadvertent decisions, let's say on pay or on your benefits. Let's say your retirement gets screwed up. The union goes in there and helps fix those things. That's what we're for. And so, we're supposed to advocate for our workers in no matter which sector you're in. And I have been in the private sector as a union member. I was in the Steelworkers Union years ago when I was a kid. I was in UFCW for a little while, and I support all unions. And I think that's what we should get back to is supporting all unions and not letting anybody carve us up.
Yeah, no,
that's a huge problem.
Every worker should have at least the security of knowing that they can't be fired for any or no reason. But they hit on this point that, we both know it's impossible to fire a bad teacher or government employee. I know that's nonsense. I think that's nonsense. But explain, where this mentality comes from, because I hear it a lot. I hear it from a lot of people and a lot of different, even some union members say, well, it's too hard to fire somebody. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, we have people fired daily in the federal workforce. I mean, this isn't, there are people that get fired. People, especially bad people who do the bad things. If we have a worker at a VA who abuses a veteran, we want that process to work, but it's a process. The one thing that we stand for is that our contracts, the way our contracts work and the way the policies work, need to be held to account. So if a manager wants to fire an employee, they have to document. There has to be a real investigation. It can't just be, hey, Phil Glover's a pain in my butt, and tomorrow I'm going to put him on the street. That's not how it works in the federal government, because we have policies that state they have to lay out, what did you do? They have to give you a chance to respond. They also have to have an investigation and present those facts to a third party, which is an arbitrator or somebody else. That's just fairness. And
no,
so
it's due process. Phil, it's basic due process. It's a basic American value. We don't just pick people off the street and throw them in jail. They get a chance to defend themselves. They get a chance to confront their accuser. Why should it be any different in the workplace?
It absolutely shouldn't. And that's the problem with this mentality of these at-will workers. They want everybody to be at will. And this, segues into a few things here. But they want to make everybody an at-will worker where you walk in tomorrow, I don't like your look, I'm going to send you home, you're fired. Yeah. That should be unacceptable in the United States of America.
Or the other side of this, Phil, and this is where the segue is, or they fire you because I don't like your politics. They come in and, there's been talk of if Trump wins in November, that in January they're going to enact something called Schedule F, and I'll give you a minute to explain what that is. And they're going to fire all the federal workforce and replace them with good loyalists, basically making patronage great again under this Project 2025. Is this what you're talking about?
Absolutely. This goes back to prior to Truman, essentially, his era, where as a new administration comes in, we get rid of a whole bunch of civil servants and we bring in a whole bunch that like me and what I like to do. Schedule F would essentially set up a plan to ensure that about 50,000 federal workers would become at-will workers. And they would be able to get rid of all 50,000 and bring in 50,000 new feds that are loyal to the Republican Party.
Or eventually the Democratic Party.
It could be, depending on who's taking over. This could backfire on some people that think that's a good idea. But right now, the federal civil service are hired through merit hiring practices. It's standardized. You have to have qualifications. You go through interviews, and you get to work in the federal government, and you have a pretty stable career. They want to be able to come in Right now, there's only 4,000 presidential appointees on the political side, people that run agencies like the secretaries and their underlings, their deputy secretaries. Those are all political appointees. And as they go out the door, as a new administration comes in, the new president has a right to pick about 4,000 of them. That's enough to drive your agenda if you do it right. Problem is, last time, the last administration, they didn't hire all 4,000. They barely put, I think, 2,000 people in place, thinking that they would disrupt government to the point that it wouldn't function. This
and then we find out it's those people, that those 50,000 they want to go after now, who actually do keep things going. So this Project 2025 then is to fix what you just pointed out, that Trump didn't actually do the job, didn't probably know what the job was, but this is the think tank world going, don't worry, we got your back. We're going to bring you the loyalists. Or am I reading this wrong?
No, well, the way it's written, that's exactly what they want to do, which is they want, the president to come in, get rid of about 50,000 federal employees in all the agencies, bring in 50,000 loyalists, and they would then implement whatever agenda the new administration would want. The problem with that is, and for the public, what they don't understand is rules and regulations based on laws are how the federal government operates. So Congress passes a law, the president signs the law, it comes in. The agencies then interpret the law and implement it at the agency level, whether it's Bureau of Prisons, VA, you name it. Like, let's take the PAC Act, for instance, that expands coverage for all of these veterans as far as getting new care, especially for burn pits and things like that. So the VA management puts together rules and regulations on how that is going to be implemented at the VA. And it's based off of how the law is written, and it's based off of the record of how the law is written. And so they want to pretty much throw that out, that process. They're going to have all these people that just interpret it as the administration, one person decides. It's a bad idea.
No, and you, as you're talking through this, my mind starts going towards the recent Supreme Court decision to get rid of the Chevron deference. So do I want a bunch of judges? I mean, we're in this weird kind of world where, the VA, they know what veterans need. They know what their systems are. Do we want them making rules, or do we want judges making rules, or loyalist bureaucrats put in by someone like Trump or somebody else? I mean, we're really talking about a chaotic mess that's being created here.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a while to get these rules in place. You have to put them out for public comment. There's experts that are involved that bring these things together. And I want to say this before, I get 22,000 hits about the VA has its problems. It does. It's a big agency. It's trying to take care of all these veterans that came back from Afghanistan, Iraq. All of the Korean War vets are now, toward God forbid, toward the end of their lives. You got Vietnam vets they deal with. So, I don't want it to sound like this is some sort of panacea here. The issue, though, is you got to have a standard way of getting these rules in place so employees understand what they're supposed to do, so the public, so veterans understand what they're supposed to do, and we get these benefits to veterans the way they need it. The same with the other agencies like meat inspection, same way there, same way with Bureau of Prisons and federal prisons. We want rules in place that make sense for the inmates, for the staff, and for the visitors, and for the public. Those things all go through a process, a rulemaking process, and we don't want to short circuit that.
So last line of questioning I got for you, obviously on Sunday, big news, President Biden is stepping aside. He gave a full-throated endorsement to Kamala Harris to be his successor. I think it was the right move. I'm curious your thoughts, and for your union, what are the thoughts here? I mean, now it kind of throws things into a little bit of a chaotic situation, but ultimately good, bad. Any thoughts?
Well, obviously Biden has been very good for federal workers compared to what we had in the last administration. Vice President Harris understands that. I think she's well versed on what goes on in the federal sector at this point. She was a senator. The issue for us is we have an endorsement process that we'll have to go back to, I believe. I think our National Executive Council will meet on this fairly quickly and talk about steps forward as far as what we're supposed to do, informing our membership. That'll be part of this, and how we go forward into the next 100, and I think we're at 109 days.
Yeah, no.
So this is going to be a real quick turnaround, but we'll have to see what our process allows and doesn't allow, I guess, on our national executive.
I'm looking at this as a positive. Maybe this could be the future of elections. Maybe 3 months is all we need to get someone elected, and we don't have 2, 3, 4 years of campaigns and ads and attacks and all this stuff. Maybe we can truncate that down a bit and maybe use those resources in a better way. But I got to tell you, in knowing what the Trump administration did to federal workers, all of the horrible things that they went after, I can't imagine that your general president or your president is going to be showing up at any RN. Never mind. I'm sure that there's not going to be a Trump endorsement coming.
I have a sense that that's not going to happen, considering the executive orders that he did the last time, and that we think will come within the first couple weeks of a new administration if it's Trump. He threw our union people out of their office space, negotiated office space. He eliminated some of their appeal rights and how much time they had to appeal discipline and adverse actions. There was a number of collective bargaining was cut to a very short amount of time to bargain over policies and contracts. It was terrible. And the other thing he did, and I think the private sector needs to look at this, the National Labor Relations Board and the Federal Labor Relations Authority, the general counsels of those two organizations are going to have their GCOs fired, and they will put in pro-business, pro-management people in those two places, and you will not get the decisions that we've been getting out of the Biden FLRA and LRB.
No, they're absolutely. But hey, maybe Josh Hawley will step in and help out. But Phil, as always, great talking with you. I appreciate the time. Look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Rick. You have a good night.
Our good friend Phil Glover. I want to hear your thoughts. You know any government employees? You know any of those evil government employees who can't be fired? Have you asked them what they do for a living and the work that they do to help us? Let me know. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So the AFL-CIO put out their guide to how to look at Project 2025, and they go through some of the things that the Heritage Foundation folks, what the playbook of the Trump administration will look like. Things like, banning public sector unions, firing civil service workers, letting, companies eliminate contracts mid-contract, eliminating overtime, getting rid of minimum wage stuff, those kind of things, little things. The little things that built the most prosperous working class in history, they want to do away with. Now, last week, you may remember, my general president, Sean O'Brien, president of the Teamsters, went in front of the RNC and gave a speech. And as I said, 2/3 of it is what I say every night on this program. The third, I'm struggling with. And one of the people that I talked to early on that we had a bit of a disagreement on is my next guest. He former congressional candidate himself, iron worker, and political commentator. So I've asked my good friend Randy Bryce to come share some thoughts with us. Randy, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for inviting me, brother. How you been?
I'm not great. I look at last week. I look at the fact that we had a major union in this country give a false equivalency, play into the both sidesism game that both the Democrats and the Republicans suck, and that there's no difference. I struggle with that. But, I guess, what was your opinion of the speech?
I was disappointed, and I wanted to reserve judgment until after he gave the speech, because as I like to, to tell other people, anytime you're given a mic, grab it, use it. And we do need to reach out. I used to think that we have to take every opportunity to reach out to Republicans, Democrats alike. And to an extent, I still think that that's very true. However, since Scott Walker just dropped the bomb on us in Wisconsin, they've done nothing but try to just destroy us, literally just wipe us off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And we've seen, I had, after they had Act 10, which went after the public sector workers, then there was some guys in the weld shop, and I talked to them, and they're like, do you really think Walker's going to go after right to work? And I was like, absolutely he is. They're like, he's going to run for president. Why would he do that? I was like, that's exactly why he's going to do it. That's their playbook. They're trying to wipe us all.
No, and that's why we disagreed. I said, it doesn't matter the words he uses; it's how they're going to use it against us. And understand, I voted for Sean O'Brien.
Right.
I want him to do well. I want him to exceed because if he succeeds, working people's lives are going to get better, and I'm all about that. I love my union, but questioning the decision to go there and be used as a dancing show pony that they're going to ride to election, because I know what they want to do. And the reason I wanted you to come on here was to talk about this Project 2025 that's out there, because they are literally telling us everything that they want to do. And it's in writing, 900 pages. You can search through keywords, do whatever you want, and you see it. But for you, someone who's in the building trades, I point to page 604, where they quite frankly say, we want to end PLAs and we want to repeal Davis-Bacon. Now, for the broader audience, I want you to explain, what is a PLA, why is it important, and what is Davis-Bacon, and why is it important? And then maybe, why do they want to do away with them?
Well, PLAs are project labor agreements, which another thing that went the way of right to work in Wisconsin. The Republicans they made it illegal to be able to use those in the state as well. And what those are agreements where the contract, at least on jobs that use government money, they're still okay to be used private contracts. But what they are is it's basically an agreement where the contractor sits down and they go through all the different scopes of work for who's going to do what job. And oftentimes there's, wording put in there so that strikes are disallowed for the term of the project, even though somebody's contract might come up while the project is going on. And it just makes everything so much easier, and everybody knows what their job is when they get to do it. And it's been in place. I don't know when the first one started, but for the entire time, it made it allowable so that like a building going on in Milwaukee County we could have a mandate of how many workers we could bring in minority workers that lived in the area that were within the jurisdiction of that area. The only reason that you would disallow it is because you think that unions are not worth it.
Well, no, I see. Here's where
it's really sad, because we've had.
This is where I question that, because you said this is a union thing. I don't necessarily see it has to be that. It's simply setting down the rules of the game. It's simply saying everyone's going to play by this set of the rules. Everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing. Everyone knows, what their wages are, the conditions are, everything. There's no guesswork. So if you're a contractor, wouldn't you want that, since you know in the bidding process what all the variables are going to be? It seems like something that you would want to create a kind of solid environment.
Absolutely. And that's why it's still allowed for private contractors to use. But if you have government money go into it, that was the way that the Republicans here felt that they could keep unions down. Even though, non-represented contractors are welcome bidders as well for that. If they get the contract, they're in, and they're part of the agreement as well. Talking with the Racine's mayor, Corey Mason, a couple of weeks ago, he was like, there's so much money that we could get minorities into apprenticeships using these kinds of programs. He's like, but it's illegal for me. I can't do this. And everybody loses. Nobody wins as a result of it.
Well, somebody's got to win, because ultimately there's got to be a reason that Republicans are so dead set against this. And my only argument is that I can come up with, and maybe you can help me here, is because the non-union contractors are paid so low that they don't want anyone to know really what it is that union contractors are paying their employees. So it seems kind of like we don't want to let anyone look under the blanket or the curtains. Or is there more to it than that?
True. No, I think that's a lot to it. But as we've seen in Wisconsin, these attacks against unions there's not much rhyme or reason to them. They're blatant political attacks, because the building trades, and not just the building trades, but unions have seen that Democrats have done more for us. I mean, you look at the PRO Act and things like that, who's supporting it and who's against it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Look, I'd love to live in the world that Sean O'Brien laid out. I would. I wish there were, once again, pro-labor Republicans who believed in collective bargaining rights, who believed in using project labor agreements, believed in prevailing wage, minimum wage. I wish that rare animal were still around, but they're not. They've shown us time and time again, this isn't who they are. And I don't know that any amount of outreach and olive branch sharing is going to bring that. Now, I brought up Davis-Bacon, prevailing wage. They want to repeal that. Can you explain what that is and why you think they want to go after it?
Well, again, that's something that's been they got rid of in Wisconsin. I mean, and just to see how that experiment went with Scott Walker and the Republicans, again, that's horrible. And what that is basically, it's still, I mean, federal money, that's Davis-Bacon. That's covered by Davis-Bacon. But on the state level, that was just prevailing wage.
Right.
So thank goodness that on a federal level, that still is there as a protection. And basically what that says is that they take a geographical location and they'll do surveys of all the people that do X amount of work, and they come up with an average, and that's what the government wages, that's what they require to be paid on these jobs. And that way it makes sure that you don't have unscrupulous contractors that come in and try to lowball everybody, do a half-ass job, skip town, not pay into any benefits, unemployment or workers' comp, and skip town, and then they're left with a garbage project that somebody, usually a union, has to go in and tear apart and put back together again.
Yeah.
It provides fair wages and benefits for those that do the work in a given location on a government job.
No, I've said for years, all the years I've been doing this program, that in places where they've done away with prevailing wage, you've seen costs actually be worse, building projects more shoddy, and you lose your local trade. You lose your local building trades. They all go off into other jobs that pay better wages than the local ones do. And you end up with transients coming through doing shoddy work. And I've said before, look, if we're going to have a roof put on my kid's school where my kids are going to spend their day, I want somebody whose kid might be sitting right next to them being the one who puts that roof on, because they're going to do a much better job. They're going to be empowered to say, hey, this isn't right. We got to fix this before they head off to the next job somewhere miles away. So for me, it just seems sane and rational to have a well-funded, well-trained, well-staffed building trades locally.
Absolutely. And all that money, I mean, if you're using tax dollars to pay for it, that's from the local community. And if you're using, a lot of times it helps to hire local too. And that keeps all the money back in the system, and it goes right back into the tax base.
Seems simple, but here again, we've got one party, and this is where my frustration with President O'Brien is, with the message that both parties suck. And that is, you've got one party who is wholeheartedly trying to destroy things like prevailing wage, things like project labor agreements, and other ones who are trying to make sure that they're there. And to President Biden's credit, all of the infrastructure bill money, there are project labor agreements and Davis-Bacon attached to it. That speaks volumes.
Right. No, it really does. It really does. And I mean, I think had the wording been differently, I mean, I understand it's in front of the RNC, but I think a better message would be that nobody can do enough for the building trades. Don't try to equate both political parties as both wanting to be good for labor, because one side is, without a doubt, they're out to gut us. And again, it's political attacks, and it's not about anything that's good for the worker. It's about power, and it's about who is going to kiss their ring and, just take part in these auctions that our political system has become.
Now, I got to get your thoughts. Yesterday, President Biden stepped aside. On Sunday, he stepped aside and basically handed the torch over to Kamala Harris. Do you have any thoughts on, was this a good idea, bad idea? Do you have any thoughts on the direction forward for that, for a Harris campaign, especially with the backdrop of the kind of attacks we're seeing coming out of this project 2025?
I think it is a good thing, because this is, you always hear this election is the biggest one. But when you have something like Project 2025 that you can read through and see how it's bad, not just for, union workers, but it's horrible for veterans. And when it cut veterans benefits as well, we cannot lose this one. And it's written, it's a playbook. It's there. We've seen what Donald Trump is about before. And now to claim that he doesn't know anything about what's going on, I think it's being handled in the best possible way. The members of Congress that I have reached out to ask, I was like, is this really what we want to do? And they were like, yes, it is. Not just based on what they're seeing, but based on the calls to their offices of what the people, and these are, progressive members of Congress that actually listen to what people care about.
Yeah. No, look, I love Joe Biden.
I think the way that it was handled was, I can't think of a better way. And let's make this transition. I don't know who's going to be the VP. I'm not worried about that. But now's the time we need to pull together and make sure that whoever is on that ticket soars. And there's no question that's who's going to win the presidency come November.
Well, that's the hope. But look, I love Joe Biden. And I said from the very beginning, after that Thursday debate, I said, look, I think it's time for him to pass the torch, but I believe that he will do in his heart what he knows is in the best interest of this country. He will make the right decision. And my faith was not in any way wavering that he would make the right choice. And I think he did. And I think he knows it's the right choice, because, the great things that he has done, the transformational things that this administration has done need to be moved forward. It can't be something that Trump comes in on day one. And again, he said he will be a dictator on day one to undo all of that. So all the progress goes away and we end up back, well, in not a great position.
No, not at all. And that was one of the scary things that when Trump was elected president, one of the first things he did was call some of the building trades presidents to the White House. And I was like, if he does something and works out a deal with them, I was like, he's going to be a 2-term president right then and there.
Said the same thing.
And thankfully, he was full of crap like he is about everything else. And that never came to fruition. But no, I totally agree with you that we can't even let up on the gas pedal for where unions have gone thanks to President Biden and what he's been able to bring. The first president to walk a picket line too. But no, we can't go back. We can't slow down. We just got to keep going forward. And the way that it was handled, I feel I can't think of a better way to have done it. Just everybody seems to be, okay, it's the time to circle our wagons and make sure that we move ahead in a positive manner.
So, the DNC is coming up here in a couple of weeks. A lot of people are saying it's going to be like Chicago in '68. There's going to be chaos. Do you see this as something potentially chaotic, or do you think that they'll come around and this will be something that they really get behind, and it'll be a love fest?
I don't know if it'll be a love fest, but I think that it'll be a lot more calm than predicted. Just because people are already, some of the other potential candidates like Pete Buttigieg, Gavin Newsom are coming out already in support of Vice President Harris being their candidate, and there doesn't seem to be any backstabbing going on that I'm aware of.
But Joe Manchin, somebody's calling for Joe Manchin.
He's never one you want to turn your back on. That's not a surprise.
Excellent point. The only person calling for Joe Manchin to run for president is Joe Manchin, clearly. So last question I've got for you. Again,
Absolutely.
I look at where we are in this moment, and it's again, I have people saying, well, the Teamsters are a very diverse union. The building trades are a very diverse union. Does it matter to your members, do you think, that this plan is so bad? Or have we done enough to educate? Because I look at what the National Review said. And the National Review is no hippie liberal publication. They said that
No.
Trump's appeal to union members is cultural. It's not ideological. So there's kind of a cult of personality going on there, even though maybe they know that he's not in line with their values, wants, and needs. Do you see something along that line, or is there something more, do you think?
I think a lot of it has to do with some people being afraid of like immigration. They think they're going to lose their jobs, or they don't feel comfortable with the LGBTQ issue. There's not enough education, basically, when it comes down to it, about this Project 2025. And that's the number one thing we have to do too, is get the word out to all of our members to let them know that this is coming. But even that's not going to be enough. Where there had a group in the middle of Minnesota that are diehard. Most of them are diehard Trump supporters, and it's tough to talk politics when you go out there and try to deal with them, because they just think that if we're full of it, we're lying, and we're trying to do something not to steal their vote or to try to sway them without facts, even though it's something that's written down. And that's a tough one to try to educate, and that's something we just have to keep pounding in, and hopefully not lose to the point where we lose all this progress that we have made, and they are able to enact Project 2025.
No, the reality is leadership, and this is where another problem that I have with my general president. Leadership is about doing what's in the best interest of your organization. I think leadership in this situation is going, I know how bad Donald Trump was. I know what Project 2025 is, and I'm going to steer you away from that clear and present danger. For me, that's what leadership looks like. But Randy, I appreciate you taking some time for us. I'd love to have you come back again and talk to us again.
Anytime, brother. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks so much, Randy Bryce. Again, this for me is not personal. This is all about how do we make sure lives get better? How do we make sure those building projects that are going up all around this country pay good wages and reverberate through the local economy to make lives better? That's what it's about. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break to wrap things up. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. A group of labor leaders and members of the Working Men's Party met in St. Louis. They were there because of the labor strike that had swept the nation. The United States was in the grip of a terrible depression. Railroad workers in Martinsburg, West Virginia, had walked off the job after their wages were slashed. The popular uprising of workers spread to cities like Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Chicago. Railroad tracks were ripped out of the ground. Workers rallied and protested, and workers from other industries joined the March of Labor. In St. Louis, the response of workers was even more radical. Many of the workers in the city were German immigrants. Some remembered the working class uprisings of 1848 in Germany. At the St. Louis meeting, they declared the start of the St. Louis Commune, a takeover of the city by working people. They called for the 8-hour day and the end of child labor. On both sides of the Mississippi River, both in St. Louis and East St. Louis, workers began a general strike. Railroad traffic was stopped. It was the first general strike in U.S. history. The workers had taken over St. Louis. 3,000 federal troops were amassed, along with thousands of gun thugs paid for by the railroad tycoons. The workers' rebellion was crushed. The strike committee was arrested, and at least 18 people were killed. Across the nation, 100 people lost their lives in the Great Upheaval of 1877. City leaders scrambled to build armories so they could quickly arm troops in case the workers rose up again. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I'm glad Randy Bryce came on the program to explain what PLAs are and what prevailing wage Davis-Bacon laws are, because I think it's important to understand that we built the most prosperous working class in the history of civilization with smart policy and sound investment. So when the Biden administration sought a large infrastructure bill, understand they wanted much chunkier than what we got it. They wanted a much, I think 3 times larger than what we got. And understand, we need 4 times larger than what we got, but we got something. And in that is a way not just to rebuild the things that we need, but a way to make lives better. Ultimately, an economy has got to be about making lives better. And this is what the RNC, this is what that whole political theater thing, especially on Monday, was all about. It was about trying to convince working people that they're on the side of working people. That because maybe they can be explained a policy and maybe they might possibly change their mind for a short period of time means that they're reachable. I personally don't believe that they are, because they've shown us. Don't tell me anything. I don't want to hear a word from you. I want to see what your actions are. And what the RNC showed us is Republicans know the right words to talk about when talking to working people. They know how to say, oh, look at J.D. Vance's story. Look, J.D. Vance has a great story. A kid who did really well, worked his way out of poverty, joined the Marine Corps, got education money, went off, got an education. But what they don't tell you is, well, along the way, found a billionaire who pushed them in the right direction, mentored him, and all of this other stuff, and then created this story. Look, did he do an amazing thing? Yeah, I think he's got a great story. But a lot of Americans go through that. They just don't meet the billionaire who takes them to that higher level. This is where I'm struggling. And it's those policies, it's those things that were put into place that are there to make lives better. And I look at what the Republicans have done. Again, don't care what they say. In every instance, their goal is to make more for the very folks at the top and less for everybody else. They've shown us this. Look at their tax proposal. Their tax proposal is laughable in that it will raise taxes on the working class of this country considerably. And it will lower taxes on the very wealthy in this country considerably. A massive redistribution of wealth, and yet you don't hear the corporate-controlled mainstream or radical right-wing media really talking about what it would do. Because, well, they're all part of it. As I find out every time I speak up on something I believe in, sponsors leave. That's part of this game. The difference between me and literally everybody else is this isn't my livelihood. This is my passion. This is what I want to do. This is the way media should be. We should be taking on the tough fights. We should be talking about things from varying perspectives and holding our own accountable when we don't agree with them. I look at what the Republicans are telling us they want to do. And I believe them. But I know in the past, they've shown us. So there's no question in my mind that this grand plan to ban workers from joining unions in the public sector, from firing all the public servants that are out there, to let companies just eliminate contracts, to end overtime as we know it. They're in the process of eliminating child labor laws. I know this is the direction they want to take us. And I keep going, they want to take us back to the 80s and 90s. Not the 1980s and 90s. Back to the robber baron era, the Gilded Age. And they want to return that. They want to make the Gilded Age great again. And yet here we are in this moment where, quite frankly, they're winning. And it's going to take working people to wake up to the reality that lives are getting harder, not because of, well, Democrats gave $600 out or or we have welfare programs where we treat people with dignity and respect. No, it's happening because the wealth class of this country is literally robbing us blind. Our wages have not kept up with inflation over the last 50 years. And it's about time that we start pushing for it. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, want to hear it, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you check out the podcast. You miss any moment of it, it's always there. Also, freespeech.org for our video content. I'll tell you, folks, we're exciting times. Going to be interesting the next couple of weeks up until the DNC convention. I'm excited. We'll see. Thanks, as always. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.